Hello, and welcome to the C3 Method Podcast with your host, Robert Polenic. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Today's podcast number 2272, and the title is Diet Refeeds. What, why, and who? One of my clients is getting ready for her first aesthetic competition. That's when you get on stage, show off your muscles and leanness, and usually a very small amount of clothes. She's going to be doing the figure division. There are multiple divisions for females that range from lower levels of muscularity but still very lean, up to incredible levels of muscularity and incredibly lean. She's going to be kind of somewhere right in the middle. She joined an online community for first-time competitors as a way to increase her social interaction, get to connect with others who are going through similar experiences. I thought it was a really good idea for her to do that. And in that group, there were a lot of discussions. Actually, 2 podcasts ago, we talked about one of the discussions was based on menopause and cellulite. And then today, we're going to talk about another topic that came up quite often, which was refeeds. So I want to talk about what is a refeed, why do people use it, and then who should use it. A refeed is essentially just a high-calorie day during a diet process. So typically when we're dieting to lose body fat, which would then cause us to lose weight, we are going to be in a calorie deficit. That deficit means we're eating below our calorie maintenance. Calorie maintenance would be how many calories you need to kind of stay the same way you are now. If you wanted to maintain your muscle mass, your body fat, and not really change much, that would be your maintenance calories. In order to lose fat, we do have to eat into a deficit. A refeed is whenever you would voluntarily give up that deficit. Sometimes people will do a refeed to where they eat very close to maintenance calories, but maybe slightly under. They'll guesstimate about 5 to 10% under maintenance. Sometimes a coach would use maintenance calories, and then sometimes they would actually let their athlete eat above maintenance. There are cases in which any 3 of those scenarios would work out well. Usually, if you're going to eat above maintenance, it's because the person has a high amount of muscle tissue, and what you're going to try to have in excess above maintenance is going to be mostly carbohydrates, so you're trying to refill glycogen levels. So that gets more into like the why of why you might do it. But the what of what it is it's a voluntarily chosen day that you eat like much higher calories than you normally would during the diet process. There are a couple structures in which people will use. They might do a refeed day, meaning they eat that the calorie amount kind of spread out throughout the day. So let's say, for example, they've been dieting at 1,500 calories and they decide to eat 2,000 calories on a refeed day. Well, the coach might say, hey, I want you to eat 2,000, but I want you to kind of spread that out throughout the whole day. Another approach would be a singular meal. So they might say, I want you to have breakfast and lunch in our normal portions, but then at dinner, I want you to eat an extra, say, 500 calories. And then that leads to a very large meal. So sometimes the refeed can be spread throughout a whole day. Sometimes it can be a singular meal. Almost always, the refeeds are controlled, meaning there's a caloric control to the top end. I started all this stuff when I was 15, 16. I started reading about magazines, reading in magazines, and then eventually we got internet when I was 17. I'm 41 now, not 1,000 years old. But when I started this, there wasn't internet in our house, believe it or not. But at that time, you would read about professionals. They might have a cheat day. That would be their phrasing would be a cheat day. And they would go have a bunch of sushi or burgers and fries. And the idea of that structure was there really probably wasn't much of a calorie limit, because those guys were, you're talking about around 5'8" to 5'10", 250, 260 pounds at 10% body fat, and they're taking a ton of drugs, like steroid type things, that help maximize their metabolism and protein synthesis and basically how their body would process the food. So they could have in a ridiculously high day, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 calories and it wouldn't have a detrimental impact as that would have on a regular human who was not that much muscle and not on all those drugs. So when you hear of cheat days, if they don't have a calorie control, you're most often looking at enhanced athletes and much larger than normal people in regards to muscle tissue. So when you look at a refeed typically is a term that has more control over it than a cheat day. Like a cheat day, very little control. Eat a bunch of crap. Refeed is, okay, we're going to control how much we eat. We might even have limitations on what we can eat. So we're definitely increasing our calories, but there's more specifications to it. There's more control to it. Now, why people would do this is there are many reasons, but I listed 3 that I want to share. One would be is the concept of restoring metabolism. In a general way, when we create a caloric deficit, we're trying to eat under the amount of calories that the body burns per day to maintain daily activity and whatever we do to it. If we go for walks, if we work out, whatever we do, we want to slightly underfeed the body compared to its caloric usage. So if it's using 2,000 calories a day, we're going to try to eat at only 1,500, and that promotes 500 calories being released from body fat to cover that gap. When you do that for an extended period of time, the body starts to think, okay, well, I'm giving up, X number of calories every day. I would eventually run out of calories to give up. Therefore, I would run out of protection to run my organs and do the things that keep us alive. So over time, the body starts to say, well, if I don't need to use, say, 2,000, can I slow down how much I grow the hair, the skin, the nails? Can I slow down how much I do non-essential processes and now only be in excess of 400, then eventually 300, then eventually 200, then eventually the body tries to normalize to the amount of calories that you're eating. You then wouldn't promote any body fat, right? Like body fat loss. So you would then eventually just be at a match. You would then have to eat even less calories in order to promote more fat loss. One of the ways to prevent how fast the body adjusts to the lowered calorie amount is to throw in refeed days in which you eat a little bit above normal and the body was maybe right on the verge of starting to reduce non-essential processes. It says, oh, hey, okay, well, I was only getting 1,500 calories all these other days, but now we got a 2,000 calorie day. I guess I don't need to do that. So you can, quote unquote, restore metabolism or reset metabolism. There's a bunch of terms people use that probably aren't highly accurate. But what they're essentially doing is trying to, quote unquote, trick the body into not reducing its non-essential processes calorie allocation. So that way we can maintain the core calorie deficit for longer before the body fully adapts. So that's one reason why people would use a refeed. The second reason is maybe for performance. If somebody's reporting their workouts being just absolute trash, low energy, and they just low motivation, just feel awful, you would say, you know what? It's important that we maximize the stimulus of our training. So that way we can maintain the muscle we want, maybe even build new muscle. We can maintain our strength. We can actually promote all the fat loss effects that the training offers. We want to maximize what our training can do for us. So if the energy is so low that the stimulus from the training is getting poor quality, let's go ahead and do a refeed. Let's eat a little bit of food. Let's give the body back some energy, fill up some glycogen, which is stored carbohydrates, so stored energy in the muscles. And then all of a sudden our workout intensity goes back to normal. The person feels good. They feel fired up and excited. So training quality improves for a short period of time. So that would be a second reason. A third reason would be the mental and emotional recovery. If a person is just getting grinded down, low energy, they're hungry, and their mood is kind of crap, and they're like, oh gosh, this is just awful experience. I don't really like this experience. I don't know how long I can do this. You can do a refeed day to kind of replenish their soul and get them feeling like fired up and saying, oh, wow, that was a great day. I feel so much better. Okay, now I'm ready to really push. I'm ready to really push these next couple days. So you can use it for many reasons, but those are three main reasons why people would use a refeed day, is to restore metabolism, whatever terminology you want to use there, refill glycogen or kind of replenish training stimulus, and then the emotional and mental kind of reset. Now, who needs a refeed? There are many scenarios in which a refeed would be helpful, and there are many scenarios in which a refeed is not helpful. Let's go through a couple of the how is it helpful ways. One would be if they're a performance athlete and they just happen to need to lose some body fat or lose some weight, but their performance is extremely important. One example is I'm currently working with a swimmer who is near the level to be going to the Olympics in the next major Olympic Games. So we're working on nutrition to where we're eating enough to fuel their performance in training and be able to provide what their body needs to make adaptive progressions. But we do want to control body fat. Now, we're controlling that not only for sport performance, but also for mental and emotional health. I want them to be happy with the way their body looks. They're going to be in the sport. It's their passion. It's their fun. But if you hate your body, that's really hard because you're in your body 24/7. And the Olympics are only every 4 years. So I know there's a lot of activities between there. I have worked with people at the Olympic level. I'm aware of that. But it's hard to hate the body you're in for performance aspects whenever performance might be, every 2 to 3 months there's a major event. So we want to find a balance between performance but also being happy in their skin. So that's something where fat loss and or weight control is important for them, but it's secondary compared to performance. So we might use refeed days on the day before or the morning of or the day of their event, and then we might have really low calorie days between the events. So we would use a refeed day to peak performance if and when needed, and then lower calorie days to drive fat loss or weight control. Another example would be diet modifications for long duration diets. Let's say somebody's dieting for over 16 weeks, over 20 weeks, over 24 weeks. That's a lifestyle, a sense. If you're looking at somebody doing a diet for half a year, that's not something you can just kind of, put your eyes down, put on the blinders and grind your way through. That's a long time. There's a lot of stuff in your life that's going to happen in half a year. So we want to have some modulation to factor in social events, emotional, mental health, making sure that there's times in which they can go higher in calories for various needs, but then still be low enough in calories in the days between the high days to drive the change and result that we want. This means that you're going to have some days that are ultra low, but then you're going to need to then have days that are high. Maybe they're traveling. Maybe they have a social event. Maybe they have a birthday. Maybe they have a spouse birthday. There's just a bunch of stuff. Maybe they go on a vacation. God forbid they go on a vacation in 6 months. So there are times in which eating closer to maintenance makes sense. So then you use much further away from maintenance on the other days. So you end up having these highs and lows. And that would be caloric cycling. You can kind of use whatever terminology you want. But that would be an example of a refeed client where we're going to have days it makes sense to eat higher calories, and then on days we push the calories down really low. Then you also have on the other end of the spectrum people who do crash diets. And this could be for aesthetics, this can be for weight control, for sports, this can be for a lot of reasons. But they have a crash diet. It's a diet we're trying to do, 4, 6, 8 weeks, take off as much as we can. I'll do this sometimes for athletes who participate in weight limit sports. We might need to be in the off season, say 20, 25 pounds over their competition weight. So that way we maximize progressions, maximize joint health, muscle health, life quality. And then maybe 4 to 6 weeks before the event, we have to crash off, 15, 20 pounds or so. This would be the case where refeeds can be helpful because you might have ultra low calories, major, just maybe right down at the BMR for days on end. And then we have a big training day, maybe a full training day, or maybe they just have, their mind's going crazy. So you say, hey, let's do a refeed day, let's reset things, and then let's drive everything back down again. So sometimes you can use refeeds to create higher long term, in regards to like week long or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, deficits. So maybe we want to drive at the like a course of 1 week, we want to drive a 7,000 calorie deficit. That's a large deficit. We might need to use a refeed day in the middle, so that way we can really drive down the calories on the other days. It might be easier for them emotionally and mentally to drive 2 to 3 real low days, a moderate day, 2 to 3 real low days, rather than have every day be semi-moderately low. There's never a reprieve from the stress, from the low energy, from the hunger. So it's nice sometimes to have that moderate refeed day, and then those ultra lower days. It actually allows them for a greater overall deficit over the course of multiple weeks. So those are examples in which it would make sense to where you can use a refeed day. And again, the main reasons why we'd be using is to restore metabolism, restore performance, and restore emotional and mental health. Now, do I use refeed days with clients? I don't actually use them too often. And part of it is I allow clients and encourage clients to modulate their calories based on how they're feeling and based on what they're doing, to where the days they're most active, we tend to eat higher in our ranges. And then the days they're least active, we eat lower. And by modulating that slightly per activity level per day, it decreases how large into a deficit we get for emotional and mental health, how large into a deficit we get for performance-based aspects. So I like to have more micromanagement control of the deficit that we would create for metabolism, for performance, and for mental and emotional health, rather than waiting for things to get so shitty, basically, that we need a refeed day. I like to have it be more moderate and micromanaged from day to day, so that way we don't have to get to such a horrible state that we need the refeed day. Now, I know programming and coaches who, for example, in this scenario where this client is talking to other athletes being trained by other coaches, likely the coaches are using a formula and they're just telling, hey, every bikini competitor eat this way. And based on your body weight, based on your body weight, here's this calculation that says what you should eat every single day. Here's a training program that every other bikini athlete is doing as well. You're going to feel eventually like shit, but you're going to check in with your weight if the coach is decent. They'll check in, and if you're losing weight on track, you get a refeed day. If you're behind, you get yelled at and you get questioned whether you're being adherent to the program, whether you're really disciplined or not, and you don't get a refeed day. So there tends to be a lot of refeeds involved in bulk programming because the coach is not micromanaging or sharing or communicating with that athlete every week to understand where they're at emotionally, mentally, performance-wise, metabolism-wise, all those things. So they're just like, hey, every X days you do this. Oh, you missed your weigh-in, you don't get it. Oh, you made your weigh-in, okay, you get it. But they never really check in with the person to see how they're doing emotionally, mentally. It's not uncommon for someone to be doing awful emotionally, mentally. The coach never checks in. They're just like, well, you missed your weight. You must be a piece of crap and you're not doing everything right, so screw you. You don't get your refeed day. And it stinks that coaches like that exist. It's a bummer. It's frustrating, as with any profession in the world. There are some people who do it in a very shitty way, and there are people who do it with a lot of extreme caution and care. I'm hopefully on that second end, caution and care, and trying my best to do it as least shittily as possible. But those are examples in which sometimes a refeed would be used. The reason why I don't like doing it is often a refeed is associated with things having been like out of ideal, and then the refeed resets you back to ideal. I don't like to get out of ideal. I like to stay where it's best as much as we can control. There are cases in which I might do it, like if I have a client who got sick and maybe they had like 2 to 3 days where they were really struggling to eat enough, we might have to have a refeed day once they start feeling better to kind of reset things and get them back on track. So I tend to use it more situationally per person, per whatever life event that got in the way. I'll use it more in that way rather than having it predetermined. I can't remember the last time I predetermined anybody's schedule for refeed day. Where you're going to do a high, medium, low, then a refeed on this day, and then high, medium, low, refeed on this day. I don't like that anymore. Back in the day, whenever I was learning stuff at 15, 16, 17, 18, I did try that stuff because that's what was in the magazines and that's what people knew how to do, and that's what the only options I knew existed. And then as I worked with more people, as I got my degrees and certifications, as I had more experience working with different people and with myself, I started to realize, there's a better way than that. So that's the way that I use now, is using a calorie range, allowing the person to micromanage within that range. I check in with them every week on their nutrition, on their body weight, on their mental emotional health, and then we just kind of discuss when we should be higher in the range, when we should be lower in the range, and if we ever do need a reset, we would talk about what that would look like. Okay, so there you go. So if you ever wondered about refeeds, the what, why, and who, hopefully I was able to give you that answer. If you have any additional questions, you can always reach out on our website, which is www.c3method.com, and that's 3 spelled out THREE, so www.cthree-method.com. And then we have our one-on-one coaching services for nutrition and/or nutrition and training. We have our Patreon service, which you can definitely check out. It allows you to ask weekly questions. There's a ton of nutrition and training education. And then there's pre-programmed training programs that are created for you. You can follow those, or ones you can create yourself. So a little bit of a cheaper service because everything's not as one-on-one personalized, but it's still as personalized as I can get it, making it cheap. And then if you need anything else, I work with other gyms and facilities for a different type of nutrition coaching for their training staff and or just offering online training for the gym itself. And you can again learn more about that on our website, www.c3method.com. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people it can help. If you like the information shared in the podcast, you can always find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name C3 Method. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.